Hey, and just a quick reminder that the audio-only versions of these Vital MX interviews are available on the Vital MX podcast page. Search for it anywhere you get your pods and let your friends know about it. All right, guys, we're back with another podcast. This is Dark Side for Vital MX, and today I have the brand manager for FXR, Mr. Andy White. How's it going, Andy?
I'm doing great, man. How are you doing?
I am doing great. I'm really excited to talk to you. There's a lot of questions I have about FXR and your history. The brand is growing every year, but before we actually get into FXR, I want to talk about you a little bit. And I went and did some research and kind of know a little bit about you, but I'd like you to tell our viewers, our listeners, just some of your background. You grew up in Canada, but like, how did you get into the motocross sport? How did you discover moto, and what was your trajectory through the sport early?
Well, as a kid, riding BMX bikes and stuff like that, some of my friends had dirt bikes, and I hopped on one when I was, 11, 12 years old, and I twisted that throttle, and I couldn't believe the feeling of being propelled along the dirt by twisting a throttle and all this cool power. I think it was like an RM50 or something that I rode, and I couldn't believe how cool this thing was, and I was just hooked like immediately. And I think I ran home and told my dad, like, I tried a dirt bike, and my dad's like, "Are you crazy? These things are dangerous and whatnot." And, so he basically said, "Okay, your kids, your friends have them." I'm like, "Yeah, all my buddies have them." We lived just outside the city, so there were trails and tracks. And he said, "Well, if you save up some money, I'll help you out. I'll chip in half." And so I think I cut everybody's garden grass that summer and shoveled every driveway possible to save up money, and went out and bought a dirt bike and a little YZ80 and started riding with everybody. And man, I was hooked. That was it. It's in my blood, and I don't think it'll ever go away. And I think from the age of 13, I've ridden every year of my life. Racing, riding, whatever, and still addicted to it.
I love that story because most often it's, well, my dad rode, so he passed it down. So you came from a family that didn't ride, but fell in love with the sport, and your family, your dad supported it. That's really cool.
Yeah, he did. He was, he rode street bikes and stuff when he was younger, and he knew that, they were cool, and it was maybe something I'd get into later. And he wanted to make sure that I start off right. So we went to the bike shop, and, we got a Bell Moto 3, that yellow school bus color helmet, and started with that, and some Scott goggles and some motocross gear and boots, and made sure that I was all dialed in and, play safe, and started riding with my buddies and stuff. And some of the older guys were telling me, "Man, you're really good for a guy on these dirt bikes. Never seen you before." And, they're telling me I should go race and stuff. And I was too young to drive or anything, so I had to get rides to here and there and everywhere. But that was the cool thing. I could just ride from the house and ride with my buddies all day, all summer. Man, like, I'd leave at 8 a.m. and come back at 8 p.m. And, we would borrow bags, steal gas and oil from whatever, and put it into our bikes and just ride forever and ever and ever. And it was so much fun.
Oh man, just listening to you tell that story, I'm sad for this generation that kids don't really have that in most places, where you can just go all day, go hang out with your friends all day. And like, it's just, kids don't live that way anymore.
No, they don't. And the funny thing is, as an adult now and in my 50s, I can't wait to go out to the tracks on the weekends and hang out with my buddies, and we go out and do a couple motos, and then we come in, and then we bench race and, take cheap shots at each other about our riding or whatever, some history. Yeah. And it's still going on, 30, 40 years later with some of the same guys. And we just getting together and just having a lot of fun talking about riding. And we'll go out there and do, 6, 7, 8 laps and come back and talk about it. And, we're already pumped for the next weekend. So it just will not go away. And I'm very happy that I found this passion in this sport and hobby, and now fell into a job that is involved in the same industry. And, I'm probably one of those 6% people where it's a hobby and I love my job at the same time.
Yeah, you're absolutely blessed. That's fantastic. Sticking with your racing, you did progress though to a point where you did some Canadian nationals and had a fairly successful, it sounds like, amateur and semi-pro career.
I did. I was lucky. I met a few riders that were a lot quicker than I were close to where I lived, and they coached me and helped me, and I moved through the ranks pretty quickly. I won a bunch of amateur championships, and then I hopped into pro, with some attitude, and I just got smoked the first pro race I was in. And I couldn't believe it, how fast these guys were going. And it was back to the drawing board. And I had good help from Yamaha and Honda and some local dealers. So I got pretty lucky, and I trained and I worked hard and put a solid effort into it. And I saw what some of the other pros were doing and figured, this is the only way you're going to do it is by hard work. It's not going to come to me. So I did that and followed the Canadian Nationals and got some top 10 finishes. And, during the winter, I would shoot down south to Florida and race the Florida Winter AMAs and Daytona Amateur Supercross and some other events. And New England was big too, because that's only a couple hours away from me. So Southwick was massive for me to ride down there. And I got to ride with guys like John Dowd and Keith Johnson and Treadwell and guys before them as well. So it was fun. I really enjoyed those years of racing pro, but as you get older, it gets harder. And I was lucky. The vet classes started popping up, the plus 25s and 30s. Right. And I fell right into those categories perfectly and allowed me to keep on racing forever and ever. So yeah, it's fun. It's worked out great.
Yeah. And you talked about, obviously you get transitioned into a industry job at some point, and you did a lot of that. It sounds like through hard work. You had your own suspension company and a dealership. Talk about those things and how they eventually led to you working for FXR.
Right. So when I was racing pro, one of the guys that lived not far from me that had a suspension company needed someone to help test. And I would start testing for him, and I got to learn more about suspension. And before I knew it, I was working in the shop, revalving and tearing stuff apart. And we had a couple other guys in there, and it was a lot of fun understanding more about suspension. And my role, I guess, became more marketing and sales guy for the suspension. As I was out at the tracks riding, my competitors would come over and want their suspension done. So I was racing pro, competing against other pros that had my suspension on it. So it was a little bit weird, but they had confidence that I would set it up great for them. And I was a very smooth rider when I was young and still am. And they saw how well I rode, and they figured, if I'm riding the stuff, it's got to be good. And back then there wasn't a lot of choices. So Lee Tinkler, my business partner, and I officially opened up a shop here in Montreal, and then we franchised them across the country to 5 other locations and then into the U.S. And that was in the late 80s and all through the 90s. And we had a great business going, a lot of fun, met a lot of people, connected to a lot of suspension guys. And then that led into actually owning a dealership in Montreal, a Honda KTM dealer. And the name of it was Diablo Performance. And I ended up starting a race team with the help of Honda Canada. And we brought up Treadwell and Keith Johnson. We had guys like Marco Dubé, Doug DeHaan, and Mitch Cook. I mean, it just goes on and on of all these riders that we had. And it was a lot of fun crossing the country, doing the Canadian Nationals and stuff. And then one day I had an email from a friend that worked at KTM Canada and said they were looking for a marketing race director for the Canadian division. And I applied and got the job in 2004. And that's pretty well of KTM, where the 4-stroke started, the 250F. It was hard to find riders back in the day to ride KTMs. The off-road version was bulletproof, but the motocross version in North America was pretty non-existent. Nobody really wanted to ride them. They didn't have linkages on them. They were European. So it was a hard sell. And with the help of my boss at the time, Kurt Nickel, I was working with Larry Brooks, and then Casey Lytle, Michael Sleater, then Chris Kiefer. All these guys were part of the KTM program that I worked with, helped develop this great bike. And before we knew it, we had people pounding on our door wanting to ride these wicked fast KTMs. And I ran the KTM program for 10 years. And after 10 years, I felt it was time for a change. And I decided to look at other avenues. And FXR was looking to push their motocross line. They had introduced it a few times prior, but with no real success. They were very, very successful in the snow division for snowcross. And they felt that it was time to branch out. A lot of their snowcross pros in the summer would ride moto, and the owner really didn't like it that they would wear competitive gear like Fox or Fly or Shift or whatever. So he went out and decided to make some FXR Moto gear, and it was good gear, and the timing was perfect. I was looking for a new adventure, and the owner, Milt Reimer, and an assistant, Aaron, saw that maybe I was the guy to do it, and they gave me the reins to the Moto division, and connected with some cool designers and hooked up with some riders to help promote it, like the Mike Browns and Kiefers and Alex Rays back then, and a whack of other guys. And here we are, 7 years later, racing in front of the world's best riders in Supercross and MXGP and outdoor nationals, off-road, cross-country, hard enduro. I mean, we're in all the different categories now, and life is good, and we're loving it.
Yeah, FXR has come a long way in 7 years. And I was actually going to ask, why would somebody want to start a moto brand of riding gear with it's somewhat of a saturated market? And you answered that. I love the fact that the owner didn't like his guys wearing another brand. That's awesome. That's a perfect reason to start, I think. But what I want to talk about, you mentioned some of the riders like Alex Ray and Chris Kiefer and numerous others, and starting and getting the moto side going. I feel like a lot of that, the success, has to come from the relationships you've built prior. This industry is small, and it takes good relationships and a lot of trust from people within the industry to want to use another company or to give you the chance. Would you say that's a big part of it, or was there, what was, this is a long-winded question, what were some of the key factors in the success early in FXR?
I would say relationships are very, very important to get riders to wear the product they might have been with other companies or other partnerships, and for them to trust you and to work with you on developing better gear and getting feedback. And I was lucky. The owner, Milt Reimer, is just crazy about moto, loves moto. We talk about moto every single day. He rides 3-4 days a week, so he's heavily invested in it. Same with the team. We have a lot of employees that ride moto, so we're all passionate about it. So we can all talk the talk and understand it, which is fantastic. So when I would bring riders on the program that I felt were the key guys, like Mike Brown, they knew Mike Brown, the name, the legend, Mike Brown, and he's got a great history and a lot of followers. And they're like, okay, this is a great person to work with. Let's do some testing and development and get some product on him and see where we go. And the same thing happened with Kiefer. Back in the day, we were using him on the side while he was working with other people and, paying for testing and the honest truth. And, Kiefer is brutal when he tells you that something's not right. He tells you, and sometimes it hurts. You don't want to hear that, but you need that kind of comments and information to make your product better. And with the many years of working at KTM, I had made a lot of good friendships, and I guess making sure that these riders got paid back in the day, and they trusted you. They knew that you had their back on FXR, and that they would be paid for it, and they did. And we became better friends and relations, and more people heard about the product. And word of mouth is sometimes the best advertising, and it just snowballed and got bigger and bigger and bigger. And now we're dealing with factory teams and top riders and managers and large media outlets all around the world, and it's fantastic. And you're right, it was a short amount of time for us to go from barely producing any gear to where we are today. And I'd say the success is the people that I work with. They're so passionate about it, and the riders and media and everybody that I know to help us get it to that level. So it just wasn't me. It was a lot of people that were behind this and still are helping and excited about our product. And when you've tried our product, you're like, wow, this is like super comfortable. It fits great. You have different colors, different styles, stuff for the kids, stuff for the adults, vet riders. I mean, vet riders absolutely love our product. And vet riders are very outspoken, and when they find something they like, they're going to tell everybody, and that's fantastic.
Yeah, I want to go back to something you talked about. You mentioned Chris Kiefer and him being brutal when he was testing the product and saying, "Hey, if something's not right, he would let you know." And a company like FXR could say, "Oh, that's a minimal thing. We're just going to run with it." Instead of, I'm sure it's not cheap to basically, I'm going to use the term retool. I don't know if that's the right term in gear, but to readjust, to retool something you already have to make it a little bit, probably minimally better. But if you're willing to do that, I feel like that really shows your drive to be the best at what you do instead of just settling.
No, I totally agree. We want the honest truth on our product. Maybe sometimes he was a little bit too nitpicky on some stuff, and but we still, jotted it down, put the notes down on paper, go back to the drawing board, and try and better the product. And every day we're still trying to make it better and better, and fit better, and be more comfortable, and product that won't wear out as quickly and more durable and stuff like that. So we're always pushing the limits to make this stuff better. And sometimes we don't get it right, and we hear from Chris and other riders, "Hey, this doesn't quite fit right," or "Something's up with this" on some of our test products. And that's perfect. That's what we want to hear. And that's why we pay these guys to give us the truth. And that's a tough one sometimes. If you're being paid an athlete or what, and you want a long-term relationship, sometimes you won't tell the truth.
Yeah.
And you'd say it's great, it's awesome, no problem at all. And, it's falling off his butt, or it's ripping, or the gloves are falling apart all the time, but they don't tell you the truth, and you don't know. So you need the truth. It's like when guys are testing out bikes. It's the same thing. Some bikes work great, some bikes maybe not so, but they're afraid to say something because they don't want to lose that connection or relationship. So it's tough. It's a business to be in. But Chris and Brownie and LePen and a bunch of other guys that we work with, guys in Europe, Sean Simpson, David Knight, are guys that just beat the tar out of our gear, and we can't wait to get it back to dissect it and look at it to figure out, are we making it the best we can, or do we need to make it better? Or like, what's the next step? So like I said, we're constantly pushing the limits to make this stuff better and better all the time.
I love that. You mentioned word of mouth being a key factor in, especially with the guys like ourselves, the veterans of the sport, the weekend warriors, but you still have to do advertising. So FXR chooses sometimes to advertise with like Vital MX, Pulp MX. I've seen your stuff in the game on your phone, Mad Skills, or even traditional magazine stuff. You team sponsors with Michael Lindsay's Honda Chaparral team a couple years ago, Club MX. You have to kind of pick and choose, and some are, I'm sure, more expensive more than others. How do you decide where you're going to put all your focus, and the return on investment has to be different from each one of those probably, but like, where does that decision come from?
Well, like in the U.S., there's quite a few media outlets, and every one of them has a different kind of demographic or angle that they focus on. If you all went to the same person, then you probably wouldn't all be successful. So you all have different ways. So I research them and figure out, okay, is this an avenue that we want to go down? An angle? Is this the right customer base? And we test the waters out. We'll throw some money at it, do some ads, and follow the click-throughs and see what the numbers say. And if things are in our favor, we'll continue to advertise and invest more money into it. And so far, it's like playing the stock market almost. Like you're investing in Vital, and Vital's giving me a good return. I invest in Motocross Action. That's a really good return. I hear from guys like Daryl Eklund from MXA, and constantly asking, how do we make this better for you? We love the partnership. We appreciate you spending money, but what are we doing wrong? Can we do something better? And I like that because you're working one-on-one with them. And Michael Morgan does that at Vital all the time. And Scott at Racer X is constantly on me, asking me, how do we better the partnership? So we're all working together to make a better experience for FXR. So I'm looking at the best bang for my buck. And I think that I've spending my money wisely in areas to get the best return. And sometimes, like on race teams, some teams don't do so well. Some teams do well. Michael Lindsay's team was great. They had Cody Schock on the team, which, I mean, he was a showman. He would be posting stuff day in, in the day and the night. He'd be posting 20 times a day, and people loved his images, and, we loved working with him. Mumford too, great following. So, we picked the teams that have got good athletes, and Michael Lindsay loves talking to everybody. So we thought that would be a great way to get the word out. And Club MX is another great one. We're so happy to be with Club. They have a great following, a great facility on the East Coast. A lot of amateurs go through the program. They've got a good team. I mean, Nicoletti is awesome. He's got, he writes for Racer X. He's on the Pulp Show. He's got a great character. I was walking around with him at Redbud, and it was like walking around with a Hollywood superstar. Everybody was, hey, Filthy, what's up? Like they wanted a piece of Phil and shake his hand and just pump him and get a signature. So, I like that, and I'm pumped that these guys are getting attention. And if I can help them out financially a little bit to help brand our product, then so be it. And it's a lot of fun being part of their program, and I think they deserve to be paid for what they do. And if they're getting attention, then that means that FXR can get some attention. So why not piggyback on their program? Yeah,
perfect. Two more questions for you. When it comes to like LEs, one-off special gear for special event, or even sublimation, again, that's expensive stuff. That's not easy to do for a small company. How do you choose when you're going to do special things like that?
Well, it is very expensive. The quantities are very, very low. So the margins are slim. It's more of a branding tool than anything, to get our word out there and to offer some, really good quality product, limited edition. So first come, first serve, they get it. And the kids that we support and our customers, they watch for these drops all the time. And I see the numbers of product leaving the warehouse on a daily basis with my reports, and I'm just lost for words sometimes how some of the color waves sell so quickly, and other ones maybe not sell so quickly. So it's a good tool to judge on colors and what time of the year to drop stuff. So it's more of a branding exercise, but also I think it's just cool to drop stuff for these kids to pick up that is super limited edition. And I think these kids are super pumped to wear something that maybe someone else in their state or in their area doesn't have.
Oh, yeah. Everybody likes having something that nobody else can get.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we do this a couple times a year, and it seems to work for us. The owner's happy, I'm happy, riders are happy. So let's continue doing this.
Absolutely. All right, one more. What's the 5 and 10-year goals for FXR? I mean, I heard you talk on another podcast. There's other gear companies that are title sponsors of series. And then there's, of course, the elite level riders that are super, super expensive to track down and maybe not the best return on investment. I'm not sure. But what are the 5 to 10-year goals for FXR?
I would say the 5-year is to continue. Right now, it's a little different because, there's words of recession and stuff down the road. So we just have to be careful on continuing at this level, making sure that we sell through our products, understanding the market, and getting through some tough times after COVID. But continuing to grow our business. I think we're in 43 countries right now around the world, and we'd like to be in many, many more, and support some possible maybe higher level riders down the road once more revenues come in. Mm-hmm. But our growth is very, very good right now, and it wouldn't make sense to go and hire a $500,000-$600,000 rider where our growth right now is upwards and doing very well. How much more upwards could I go than what I'm at right now? And I have a hard enough time delivering what I'm bringing in. So if I spend that kind of money, I got to bring in another $2-3 million of products to pay that rider $500,000. And I'm not ready to take that risk at the moment where things are working very smoothly for us. So we're just analyzing it and growing as we need to. The Club MX, what am I saying? We have some great high-end riders. Jeremy Martin, he's a top athlete. Marchbanks is another great one that we've got on the program. Nicoletti is also a top rider. Maybe they're not Tomacs, but they're not too far.
Right. Yeah. There's only a couple of those type guys, and Jeremy Martin's certainly capable of winning a championship. Absolutely. And I don't know. So I don't know that a guy like an Eli Tomac really sells that much more gear to the average person like myself, a veteran. Like, the kids might look up to Eli Tomac, right? And they're like, oh, I want what Eli has. But it's the parents that are spending the money anyway. So I'm not sure how much that really relates to sales.
It's an expensive question.
Yeah. Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
It's very expensive. And also, some of our competitors that have high-end riders, expensive riders, also have very thick catalogs of other products that they can fall back on. We don't sell tires and chains and sprockets and oils and chrome. So I don't have that other revenue to bring in to help pay for a rider. I'm using the monies that I have available from our gear sales. Mm-hmm. So we're working off what we have and being smart about it and making sure, the bills are paid and, we're growing and investing in the future. So we're growing at a very good pace, and maybe down the road we will have one. But as of today, I don't see the necessity. I think the athletes we have around the world are fantastic, and they're doing a great job for us. And I think this recipe is working very well for us.
I think so too. It's been really cool to see it grow, and every year more and more guys are in FXR, and the stuff always looks wonderful. I can't wait to get my first set to try out. And yeah, it's really cool to have a chance to talk to you, Andy.
No, my pleasure. It's I love telling people about the story of FXR. We're not a small company; we're a good-sized company, but the people that work at the company are so passionate, and I think that's the difference from the designers to some of the salespeople. They're all heavily into moto and love it. And when Supercross is in town, like Minnesota, we have, 20, 25 employees that show up, and they're totally into it, and they know the names of the riders and stuff. So that makes a difference when your employees get it and understand the whole moto world, because it's a little bit special. And if you don't understand it, it's hard to break into. But I'm lucky to find a good group of people that I work with.
Yeah, I'm very excited to be a part of this too by checking it out. And like I said, Chris Kiefer always spoke so highly of you guys. That's really where some of my first knowledge of you personally, Andy, was just listening to Chris talk about what a great guy you are and what a great company is. And I've said a million times, I've been involved with a different gear company for years, and it came down to the people involved with that company and how they treated me. And that's really important. And I hear the same kind and positive words about FXR. And, I think I first met you at Anaheim 1 this year. And yeah, you were really nice and friendly, and it was cool to get a chance to meet you. And I appreciate you jumping on here and talking to us and telling us your story a little bit.
No, my pleasure. Like I said, I love telling people the story and about FXR, and I'm proud to work for this company and excited for the next 5-10 years of where we go.
It's awesome. Well, thanks so much for having some time for us today, and it means a lot.
Awesome. Well, thanks for calling, and I can't wait to hear what you think of our new Revo 23 line is like.
I'm excited, and it's kind of funny. While we're doing this interview, either a FedEx truck or a UPS truck just pulled up out front, so something just got delivered. I don't know if it's the FXR stuff, but I'm like a kid on Christmas morning right now. I can't wait to go to the door and see what's at the front the front step.
Awesome. Well, timing is everything.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks, Andy. It means a lot to me, man.
All right. Thank you for calling, and have a great day.
You too.